In part 1 of this lecture, we spoke about faking namespaces using JavaScript objects such that certain variables and functions can coexist in the global scope without stepping on each other's toes, so to speak. But there's something you could do to go even further. A lot of the times when you have a bunch of functionality sitting in a script, a lot of it is not really something that you necessarily even want to put into some namespace. Sometimes you just want it to execute when the browser loads that JavaScript. You just want it to execute and kind of go away. So you don't necessarily need to put it in a namespace. So for example, if I didn't want to hardcode the string say hello, if I wanted to, for example, let me cut it and say greeting, and this greeting, I just want to declare as a regular variable. So I just want that to be a string. So I just want to be able to use that string inside of my say hello function. Well, I could do the same thing, var equals greeting, in the script number 2 and say var greeting, except this time I want to say hi and just substitute it with greeting. Well, we kind of have exactly the same problem again, don't we? Greeting now is going to be part of the window object, part of the global object in script 2, and in script 1, it's going to be, again, part of the global object. So once again, I'm going to now end up with hi Yaakov, hi John, instead of hello Yaakov, hi John. Well, one more thing we could do is introduce something called immediately invoked function expression. Let's go to our app.js, and I'm actually going to comment this out for a minute and show you what an immediately invoked function expression is. I'm sure you've seen a function before that in this course that we've done, where let's say we're just going to go ahead and console.log, say hello Coursera. Okay, so in order to now for us to execute this function, we need to say a and put our parens behind it, right? And go ahead and save that. And now you'll see hello Coursera. And you also remember that I could save this function in a variable. So I could say var a equals function log hello Coursera. And this is exactly the same thing. If I save this, you'll see it will refresh and it'll say again hello Coursera. Well, the way we execute a function is by putting these parens behind its name. Well, remember, function is just a value. This whole thing is nothing more than an object. It's a function object. So technically speaking, I could just wrap it in parentheses right here as just an object, right? So if I save it again, nothing really changes. Well, how do I execute a function again? I execute it by putting parentheses right behind it. Well, then it follows that if I erase this variable right here, I can invoke this function right in line by just putting parentheses right after its declaration. So this function is going to produce, this declaration right here is going to produce a function, and the parentheses right behind it is going to invoke it immediately. So this is what's called immediately invoked function expression, otherwise known as IIFE. So immediately invoked function expression. It's an expression because this line right here, or this set of code, is actually something that produces a value. Thus, it's an expression, something that produces a value. Well, what value does it produce? It produces a function object. And then we're taking that function object and we're just putting parentheses right behind it. And that invokes that function object. And therefore, when we save, we're once again going to see hello Coursera. And I could certainly even pass parameters to it. For example, if this function wanted a name to be passed to it, and instead of just saying say hello, I'll just say hello plus name. So if I execute it right now, what do you think it's going to say? It's going to say hello undefined. Why is that? Well, because it's asking for a name to be passed to it, and we're passing nothing to it. So let's go ahead and pass Coursera. And when we save, it will say once again, hello Coursera. So in the same vein, let me go ahead and comment this out so you have it for your record, so to speak. And I will uncomment the greeter. If I do this again, it still say hi and hi. So how can we separate them? Well, if we go to script 1, we could wrap this entire thing with parentheses, function, and wrap this whole thing into a function. So now this whole thing is sitting inside of a function. Technically speaking, I could just indent it a little bit like this. So this whole entire thing is sitting inside of a function. And if I just leave it like this, this would be kind of bad because all I would be doing is declaring a function. Well, I don't want to just declare it. I actually want this code to execute. So in order to get this code to execute and execute just on load of script.swan.js, all I need to do is put parentheses behind it and put a semicolon. So now this is going to execute the second it loads. Now if I save that, this is not really going to work. Why is that? Well, because in app.js, Yakov greeter.sayhello is undefined, is not defined. So where is Yakov greeter? Because this is at this point is looking in the Windows object to see where Yakov greeter is, and Yakov greeter is not defined there because now we've put it in its own execution context. So Yakov greeter is only living inside of this function. So how can we expose this Yakov greeter to the window object? Well, we could go ahead and pass the window object as part of the parameters to the function, and we'll say window here. And at this point, when we say Yakov greeter, we can even do it right at the end. We could just say window, that's this window right here, dot Yakov greeter equals to Yakov greeter. So now what we've done is we've exposed our Yakov greeter object and we placed it into the window object. We kind of exposed it to the outside. So now when we're in app.js, Yakov greeter is indeed exposed to the outside. So let's go ahead and save that. And now you could see hello Yakov, hi John. And the truth of the matter is, even here, we still want to do the same thing. In fact, let's go do it this way. Usually the way I want to type it up is not try to wrap those curly braces all around. It's very confusing that way. But instead do this. You have parentheses, you know there's going to be a function inside of it, and I know I'm going to want to invoke that function. So really I'm going to put the parentheses right behind it and then put a semicolon at the end. So now all I need to do is declare this function, and the function is going to have the parentheses right behind the word function and curly braces. And now I could just open it up and take this entire thing, cut it out of here, and maybe even indent it, place it over here. Let's indent it a little bit more. And there it is. Except again, the John greeter, we want to expose that John greeter to the window object, to the outside. So we'll go ahead and pass the window object here and pass it in here. And now right at the end, or we could do it right here, it doesn't really matter where, but we could do it right at the end. We could say that window.JohnGreeter is equal to JohnGreeter. So the window JohnGreeter, we're creating a new property on the window object, and we're setting it to the JohnGreeter, that is the object that we set inside of this execution context of this function. So if we save that, and now we see hello Yakov, hi John. So notice we were able to use something that we want to expose outside. In other words, whatever we wanted to expose outside, we simply placed it as a property on this John greeter object. And whatever we wanted to use inside, like a greeting, so like almost like a private variable, we could still use, and we could still use it inside the function, and we don't have to expose it to the outside. And at the same time, this greeting was not going to collide with this greeting inside the Yakov greeter, or inside this function, basically, but not inside the Yakov greeter, just inside this function, because each one of those variables is being defined in their own execution contexts, meaning in this function, and this greeting is being defined in this function. So what we've done is we've learned about namespaces, or at least how to fake namespaces in JavaScript, which is totally legitimate, and we also learned about how to utilize immediately invoked function expressions.